Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to another edition of Paisano's Music and Vinyl Talk. I am your host, as always, Paisano. Tonight, we are going to talk about the fourth studio album of Metallica, Injustice for All. This was the first full-length album after Master of Puppets, which really brought Metallica to the forefront of thrash and slash metal, as it was being called. Thrash was a term for extremely fast, aggressive metal. Speed metal is another name for it. I talk about Slayer and Megadeth and Metallica and Anthrax. Those were known as the Big Four of thrash and speed metal. Although, as time went on, Metallica started to get away from the speed and became pretty much a metal act. And they were the biggest metal act in the book for quite some time. And this was a step in that direction. Like I said, their fourth studio album. The next one was what was known as the Black Album, simply titled Metallica, that really put them on top. It became the #1 album in the country and pretty much in just about every country around the world. The Black Album really put them on top. And then, they stayed up there through the 90s. No doubt they were a huge draw through the 90s. And eventually, as the 90s started to come to a close, it was obvious they weren't really hungry anymore. And it showed. It showed. The songs became weaker, slower, and it was just obvious that the fire of the early days was gone. And they still had some fire in this one. I was able to see this tour 3 times, twice with Van Halen's Monsters of Rock. They were the second from the bottom, if you can imagine. Kingdom Come was below them, and then Metallica and Dokken, the Scorpions, and Van Halen. Yeah, if you can imagine Metallica getting second billing to Dokken. I mean, come on. The level of talent is just, it became apparent as time went on that Metallica would leave groups like that in the dust. There was no way they could, even a year later, there was no way they could justify Dokken being ahead of Metallica. And on some of the shortened dates of that tour, like at Foxborough, Massachusetts, the second time we saw it, Metallica was the bottom. And the first time we saw him, we actually saw Kingdom Come in Maine at the Oxford Plains Speedway. And then we saw him again in '89. They were still on this tour right before the Black Album came around. And that was a heck of a show. I mean, they really decided to stretch out on this one. This is a double album. The shortest song on here is 5 minutes and 12 seconds. And it's pretty much 2 songs per side. The longest one is Injustice for All, the title track, at 9 minutes and 44 seconds. Actually, the longest one is To Live Is To Die at 9 minutes and 48 seconds. I mean, sheesh, these are some long tunes. And like I said, it was a double album. They still didn't have the big money for packaging. I'm sure they would have liked a gatefold sleeve rather than tuck both of these albums into a single sleeve. There's the group as they were in 1988. This album was released September 7th, 1988. Still a young, hungry band on their way up. Although they didn't have that far to go. This is a lyric sheet, a caricature of the band. This came out on Elektra, who was their record company. Early on, after Megaforce, they pretty much took them from Megaforce early in their career. And this was produced by Flemming Rasmussen, who produced quite a few Metallica albums. Did he? Yeah, this was the last one he did. The Black Album was produced by James Hetfield, and they got Bob Rock in there. And Lars Ulrich. Yeah, Bob Rock was a legendary hard rock producer. Yeah, Flemming Rasmussen, that was the last one for him, was Injustice for All. He had a good run with the band. He produced Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning. And probably, I think he produced the first one. Yeah. Kill 'Em All. Did he produce Kill 'Em All? No, he did not produce Kill 'Em All. I'm shocked by that. His first one was Ride the Lightning. Yeah, he was there for the big ones. The big ones, well, they were a very hungry band, very aggressive band. And, you know, I was lucky enough to see them when they were still good. I saw them in '86 with Cliff Burton, considered one of the most talented of those speed metal bassists. And this was the first album with Jason Newsted, who they got from the band Flotsam and Jetsam. He had appeared first on the 598 EP, where they did some covers. And it was really unproduced. And it was pretty good. It's a damn good album. I have that one on vinyl too. I'll be reviewing that at some point. But Injustice for All was the first full-length album with Jason, and they really did him in. Injustice on this one, you can barely hear his bass at all. He really had a hard time being accepted by these guys in the wake of Cliff Burton's death. And it was really like a hazing, you know, especially at first. They really treated him like shit, you know, and you know, they really buried his bass in this album, unfortunately. Now there's the back of the album. Individual shots of the band. Track listing goes like this. Side 1 of record 1 is Blackened. And then you have Injustice for All. Side 2 is Eye of the Beholder. And One. One was the big song off of this album. Side 3 on first side on the second record is The Shortest Straw. You have Harvester of Sorrow and The Frayed Ends of Sanity. And on the final side, To Live Is to Die and Dyer's Eve. A very good album. A very good album by a band still on their way up. But a long way from where they started. They really started to stretch out. The songs became a lot more in depth, the lyrics more in depth. And, you know, they were growing. They were growing as a band. But at the same time, losing the hunger that made them so beloved early on. Slowly that was slipping away. All right, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you're enjoying our discussions here, please like and, more importantly, subscribe. Paisano would appreciate it mucho. So until next time when we see what Paisano digs out of the crates, good night, YouTube, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.